All right. Says it's showtime. Welcome. Welcome back, Wayfarer. I hope you're doing well out there in Happy Land tonight. This is a live jive archive. I'm going to look at a video that I recently saw on Chaos Magic, and I'm going to share it with you. We'll go ahead and get into it real quick, quick, fast, in a hurry. Grand Wizard of the Esoteric Order of Dagon, your friend and well-wisher, Frank Monday, coming at you on the YouTubes once again, broadcasting live from the Central Kingdom of the Celestial Dragon, Twilight Zone, Old Peking, far behind the bamboo firewall. Your well-wisher and friend, wishing you once again to hit the like button for the YouTube algobots. Keep them barking like Pavlov's dog. Check me out on www.buymeacoffee.com/Frank Monday. Pull a something in the tip jar. Holy art thou, Lord of the universe, the vast and the mighty one, creator of heaven and earth, maker of all things visible and invisible, master of both the light and the darkness. We adore thee and we invoke thee. Send us one of your divine spiritual agents, our holy guardian angel, to protect and guide us through the innumerable snares of the earthly sphere, and a cleansing wind to disperse all negativity and endless human opinion. Teach us those secret things which we must know for the completion of the great work and the glory of thine ineffable name, Adonai. So it is commanded and confirmed, so mote it be. Remember, guys, open lines, paranormal encounters is always there for you anytime and every time you have a paranormal encounter. The lines are open. We are here all about cultivating the divine, subtle energy, the universal cosmic way of the three Dantians, or elixir fields that lead to spiritual immortality. And how do they do this? By refining the Jing Qi to Shen, and then using the Shen to eke off a little bit into the realm of Wuji, where it is super condensed dark energy. These can give birth, number one, you control the lower Dantian, it gives birth to physical longevity, because you no longer lose your divine spark, your original chi, as we call it, into the prime material plane. The second one is you raise that spark of energy, that cosmic particle, up into the center Dantian, the terrestrial Dantian, where you can give birth to emotional prosperity. Like once you get the emotions under control, then you start to experience a connection with humanity, the Christ consciousness, and this gives you a prosperity of the heart, right? And then that energy steams up into the skull cavern, right? The what do they call it in Chinese? The Ling Tai, the platform of the spirit. And this is the Oracle of Delphi. No se te ipsum, dear neophyte, tu es Dios. Once you get there, you're doing pretty fucking good, and that gives birth to spiritual fertility. Next up is the process of arriving at this, right? You got to become aware of a good method, the universal method, the Tao, and then you have to learn to recognize it. Where is that method, right? Can I see it? Can I see the concourse of universal subtle energy? And do I have knowledge and understanding of it? And then finally, can I flow with it, right? Do I have mastery? One way to get there, man, is 10,000 repetitions of any good method. So invoke often, inflame yourself with prayer. When you get 10,000 invocations of the adoration of Abraxas down, you're doing good. Then you're not going to talk, because you're going to know, and you no longer are at the level of skeptical belief or disbelief, but you're at the level of knowing. And when you know, you ain't got to say shit, man. You're getting it done. We have to identify the three great deceptions in life, and we use, in part, the Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor, one of the seminal texts. And we got to answer the question up front as to why we're even doing it to begin with. And that would be in part because we're just breaking through trance, right? No new horror is worse than daily trance. No more terrible than the daily torture of the commonplace, as the prophet of our eon quipped. All right. And one specific method you can utilize is the ask method. Ask, seek, and knock, right? Ask and you shall receive, seek and ye shall find, knock and it will be opened unto you. So we're opening all the doors of the temple are flying wide open when you understand and possess the silver key, which are the 7 hermetic principles. With no further ado, guys, we're going to get into it and present this wonderful video I found by a fella here on the YouTubes that I listened to it. It resonated with me, and it might make sense with you as well. So with no further ado, let's get into it.
Modern teachings of chaos magic. Now, such a statement may seem outlandish or outrageous. Look on YouTube or on the internet today, and you'll find people talking about sigil magic, which is a type of magic designed to make one's desires come to fruition through the use of symbols or a type of symbol or a type of sign. Or you'll find people talking about experimental magic and mixing and matching different traditions together, voodoo and Gnostic Christianity and Hinduism and Kabbalah and so on. Or you'll find people making little jokes about magic, perhaps referencing Harry Potter, a children's novel after all. It can all seem incredibly trivial, but that is not the essence of chaos magic, at least as it was conceived, I would suggest. And the more interesting aspects, the more challenging aspects, the more existential aspects have been forgotten. Now, chaos magic was conceived during the 1970s in Great Britain. And that was a time of degeneration and decline and collapse in that society. And to a degree that Americans probably aren't aware, or younger British people probably aren't aware. And there were many things happening, but most importantly for the spirit of that time, there were mass strikes. The trash collectors were on strike, so you had trash piled everywhere. The teachers were on strike, the miners were on strike, and people would go from one striking place to another. And the fire department was also on strike, and so you had to have the army come out and with the green fire trucks and try and put out fires, which of course is not going to be as effective as the actual fire department. So it was a society that was visibly in decline. And another aspect that may have been forgotten is that there were frequent blackouts during the 1970s when apartments or entire streets or entire neighborhoods were plunged into darkness at no notice whatsoever. And so there was a palpable feeling during that time of decline and degeneration. And if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you check out Derek Jarman's movie Jubilee. The first 5 minutes will give a good illustration of just what that society was like. Punks, violence, degeneration, hopelessness. Now, chaos magic has come to be seen as this sort of pure experimentation, drawing and everything. But during the 1970s, it was, of course, a response to this society, which seemed to be grinding to a halt and coming to an end. And of course, behind all of these manifestations of decline is the loss of belief and the loss of faith in the traditional religion, and perhaps in the establishment as well. The traditional religion being Protestant Christianity at that time, and for several hundred years before that, of course. Now, as I say, the more interesting elements of early chaos magic, or the embryonic stages of chaos magic, have been forgotten. Now, leaving aside the odd, strange little classic text here and there, the founding texts of chaos magic are really Liber Null and Psychonaut by Peter J. Carroll. And in Liber Null, for example, we have chapters on the chaos sphere, the millennium, the aeons, which would be equivalent to the Hindu notion of the yugas. And all of this has been largely, or if not entirely, forgotten. Now, in regard to the aeons, which I'll probably talk more about at another time, but briefly, Peter J. Carroll sees the aeons developing through, or the aeons or great ages, we could say. So developing through these aeons or great ages of shamanism, paganism, monotheism, and then the fourth great age or aeon being that of atheism, which he claimed at that time we were still in. And atheism itself suggests this sort of lack of belief, this sort of Nietzschean nihilism. God is dead and we have killed him, and we have to live with the consequences of the death of God, which is, of course, not easy. Now, Carroll regards us as being on the threshold of a new aeon, and the idea of this experimental chaos magic is really to put ideas or seeds of ideas out there that would later blossom into some kind of belief system later on that people could almost cling on to, perhaps, or almost like a life raft. But in Libanon and Psychonaut, he has this to say about the current times that we are living in. And again, it is one of collapse and decline. He says, quote, "Fixed ideas about the essential spirit or nature of man will be completely abandoned. Drugs, obscure sexualities, faddism, strange entertainments, and material sensationalism are a preliminary groping towards this end. The end being the abandonment of fixed ideas about the essential human nature." And he says also, well, what is our response to this? In essence, the chaos magic is a response to this. But he says, again, quote, "The magical life demands the abandonment of comfort, conventionality, security, and safety. For competition, combat, extremes, and adversity are needed to produce higher resolutions and personal evolution," unquote. So we must face this time of lack of belief or disbelief, or in which the fixed nature of man is being eroded and dissolved, and all these strange subcultural manifestations are appearing and taking over what once was. And we must face it not through comfort, not even through doing sigil magic in our apartment or whatever it may be. These are almost incidental. I think the magic is almost incidental to the philosophy of the book. But instead, we must face it through abandoning comfort and having the bravery or the courage to go out into the world and face this sort of nihilistic situation that we are in, and to put ourselves into situations where we ourselves will be tested and can push ourselves to the limits and beyond the limits of ourselves to discover, in fact, who we are or can be. Now, this is a very different view of chaos magic, of course, and I've just been looking back after many years of not reading Libanon and Psychonaut, and find this sort of essential aspect, this philosophy behind it, to be maybe more interesting, and certainly more interesting than what we see on the net today represented as chaos magic. And I think that is worth considering. But again, I'll be making more videos on spirituality, mysticism, and perhaps all kinds of magical and esoteric traditions as I go forward. So check back. Also, you can check out my website, angelmillar.com, Millar being Millar. So thanks very much. I'll see you soon.
All right. Pretty good one, huh? Let's look back through. I'll do a little commentary. Thought I'd play it once so you get the whole meat of the thing. You could check him out for sure. And we'll have a little look at a little bit of his video here and possibly talk about it. And if you're out there in Happy Land, you'd like to join the show, let me know. Put something in the ideas room and I'll bring you on. If not, it'll just be me, myself, and I.
Outlandish or outrageous, look on YouTube or on the internet today, and you'll find people talking about sigil. The forgotten teachings of chaos magic. Now, such a statement may seem outlandish or outrageous. Look on YouTube
All right, so he starts off with saying that the chaos magic, the origins are forgotten somehow, and I don't know. I didn't know about him until recently, maybe about 5 years ago. Free gift from God. You introduced me to Psychonaut, I believe, and the other book I think Frater Tomas told me to read.
Or on the internet today, and you'll find people talking about sigil magic, which is a type of magic designed to make one's desires come to fruition through the use of symbols or a type of symbol.
So he talks about, yeah, your desires coming to fruition through symbols and sigil magic. Well, there are lots of different kinds of magic, right? I mean, magic is just one huge category, all the things inside of it. Like doing sigils are just one various facet of the magic itself. But ritual sacrifice, ceremonial rituals, operations, right? Your various magical implements, and the magical method is above all. And that's what we need to look into.
A type of sign, or you'll find people talking about experimental magic and mixing and matching different traditions together, voodoo and Gnostic Christianity and Hinduism and Kabbalah and so on.
And Taoism with ceremonial magic from a Western perspective, and Kung Fu mixed with a special secret alchemy that, yeah, we learn a little more about here. Definitely.
Or you'll find people making little jokes about magic, perhaps referencing Harry Potter, a children's novel after all. It can all seem incredibly trivial.
Yeah, and the Harry Potter thing is mostly meant as a distraction from real magic, right? They give you a fantasy version of what might have been ancient magics, but aren't apparent for us these days so much.
But that is not the essence of chaos magic, at least as it was conceived, I would suggest. And the more interesting...
The idea here, too, is chaos magic, as it were, is something I discovered on my own and had never even heard the term until maybe 2 decades ago. No, even later, a little over just a decade ago. But I was a practicing natural magician, right? And so intuitive magic, what's considered genuine gnosis, is the way you follow the path of the natural magician.
Aspects, the more challenging aspects, the more existential aspects have been forgotten. Now, chaos magic was conceived...
I would disagree that they haven't been. I mean, they've been forgotten by most, but guys like me who are very traditionalist, 10,000 repetitions of a kung fu form, that's the real work that's required for genuine magic.
During the 1970s in Great Britain. And that was a time of degeneration and decline and collapse in that society. And to a degree that Americans probably aren't aware, or younger British people probably aren't aware.
Yeah, I was just mentioning it in my last video, right? Like coming out of two world wars and then ongoing conflict, like what appeared to be never-ending conflict that people pretty much had to get involved with, whereas we're in a rare opportunity now as we dawn upon this new age where we can avoid that to a good extent.
And there were many things happening, but most importantly for the spirit of that time, there were mass strikes. The trash collectors were on strike, so you had trash piled everywhere. The teachers were on strike, the miners were on strike, and people would go from one striking place to another. And the fire department was also on strike, and so you had to have the army come out and with the green fire trucks and try and put out fires, which of course is not going to be as effective as the actual fire.
And now we're emerging just 5 years from a interesting shift in society that's being dubbed the new normal. And it's kind of a smokescreen, a bit of gaslighting against what we know to be true is that there's always a new normal, right? Change is inevitable. Change is the only constant is change, right? The book of changes and the unchanging truth. So we've got a new layer to add to this, as we will always, in every decade we'll add new layers, and in every aeon, the layers will shift and move, and we'll always be adding new layers to the equation.
Department. So it was a society that was visibly in decline. And another aspect that may have been forgotten is that there were frequent blackouts during the 1970s when apartments or entire streets or
I remember that. Not only were there constant blackouts, but growing up in Southern California, the LA as a kid, there were constant earthquakes. Like from the time I was born, the early 70s, until like probably my 20s. I remember, like, well, California, Southern California, it's very stimulating, but I remember constant earthquakes. And even the last couple of times I went back, I remembered as an Angelino, as a Californian, you just get used to them, and like the earthquakes don't even really phase you anymore. But I was there and experienced a few earthquakes the last few times I visited home, and it was interesting to remember that as a child.
entire neighborhoods were plunged into darkness at no notice whatsoever. And so there was a palpable feeling during that time of decline and degeneration. And
Yeah, and again, not only that, like growing up in Southern California, like you guys hear about the wildfires in the news, and recent one that was in the Palisades, Northern California, but that was constant when I was a kid. I remember even the volcano. Which one is it that went off? Mount St. Helens, I believe, and laid dust all over the city. Yeah, so lots of dynamic things going on. I would say the environment was extremely chaotic. In addition to that, at the social level on the ground, for the flat-footers, it was the Bloods versus the Crips and the 18th Street Latinos and all kinds of gang wars. So definitely an interesting time, very chaotic.
if you haven't seen it, I would recommend you check out Derek Jarman's movie Jubilee. The first 5 minutes will give a good illustration of just what that society was like. Punks, violence, degeneration.
Yeah, if you want to see what my hood was like growing up, you can watch Dr. Dre, I believe, like the NWA Productions, Boys in the Hood. Didn't he end up make a movie with Ice Cube and the other fellas that were still around at that time? So that would give you some indication as to the hoods that I grew up in.
Hopelessness. Now, chaos magic has come to be seen as this sort of pure experimentation, drawing in everything. But during the 1970s, it was, of course, a response to this society, which seemed to be grinding to a halt and coming to an end. And of course, behind all of these manifestations of decline is the loss of belief and the loss of faith.
And think about too, the length, the amount of birth pangs. If it began then, that great transformation in the mid 70s, it's been 50 years, right? So, are we in the new normal? Is there a new aeon upon us? Has Aquarius risen, as it were, right? Has Cthulhu risen? Let's find out.
In the traditional religion and perhaps in the establishment as well. The traditional religion being Protestant Christianity at that time, and for several hundred years before that, of course. Now, as I say, the more interesting elements of early chaos magic, or the embryonic stages of chaos magic, have been forgotten. Now, leaving aside the odd, strange little classic text here and there, the founding texts of chaos magic are really Libernal and Psychonaut by Peter J. Carroll.
Libernal and Psychonaut by Peter J. Carroll. And if this was the birth of the chaos magic aeon, right, it has its roots in this here, right? This is where we need to begin. This was the foundation. Hermetic Brotherhood of Luxor and Franz Barden's work, as well as others, Austin Osman Spar and Arthur Edward Wyatt, Aleister Crowley, McGregor's, Mathers, Wayne Westcott, all of these guys contributed. The foundation, he just mentioned it, right? The death of the old European empire. 1987, so I was 15 at this time, just in time to get it. But I don't remember ever having seen a copy of this back then, right? But this is right at the time of that. First edition was 1956. Good. So there we can see the foundation, right? Coming out of Germany. And then this one made it into the US by 1987. So how many years is that between there? That's 4 and 20. 4 and 20 brings us to 80, and then 7. So 30 something, right? Took 30 years for this to be birthed into the Americas. And then it has the essential elements of everything involved, right? What a magician is, the elements, going through the elements. You should go through them: earth, air, water, fire, right? The astral light, the akasa or ethereal principle, karma and the law of cause and effect, man, about the body, the material, the prime material plane, the soul or astral body, the astral plane, the spirit, the mental plane, so on and so forth, religion and God, truth, what is truth. So we have all the essential elements to what we need here.
And all, for example, we have chapters on the chaos sphere, the millennium, the aeons, which...
The chaos sphere, the millennium, and the aeons. I want to hear more about the aeons. This is something I need to understand and bring forward.
Would be equivalent to the Hindu notion of the yugas. And all of this has been largely, or if not entirely, forgotten. Now, in regard to the aeons, which I'll probably talk more about at another time, but briefly, Peter J. Carroll sees the aeons developing through, or the aeons or great ages, we could say. So developing through these aeons or great ages of shamanism, paganism, monotheism, and then the fourth great age or aeon being that of atheism, which he...
Interesting. So if the fourth great age is atheism, and wow, atheism though, it's an oscillation, a parlancing of mind. It's at the level of intellectual dichotomy. I would think that having moved through the realm of atheism, you would arrive at Hermeticism, right? The all mind, that all of it is within the domain of awakened, enlightened, inflamed mind, the divine spark. So he left out the age of spiritualism too. I guess many of these could be considered spiritual aspects, but I believe that's what we're having a return to, is a kind of spiritual cultivation.
Claimed at that time we were still in. And atheism itself suggests this sort of lack of belief, this sort of Nietzschean nihilism. God is dead and we have killed him, and we have to live with the consequences of the death of God.
And I think that's part of it too, is that when you move through nihilism, you should arrive at the death of belief is correct, and I think it's necessary. But the next step is knowledge. Like if you don't believe, you should know, right? And you shouldn't just believe in things. You should get deeper, right? Deep into the nature of the knowledge and understanding of that thing, so that you have the wisdom, right? The perfected wisdom and the mastery of these aspects become affluent. And if you know God, then you should flow with God, right?
Which is, of course, not easy. Now, Carroll regards us as being on the threshold of a new aeon, and the idea of this experimental chaos magic is really to put ideas or seeds of ideas.
Okay, very good. So if we're on the threshold of a new aeon, as it were, and is it really, are the aeons measured? I guess you could measure all your different aeons in different ways, but is it the Piscean age and the Aquarian age? And if we're on this threshold, have we transitioned? Are we transitioning? Are we fully? I'd say we're getting pretty close to fully into it, right?
is out there that would later blossom into some kind of belief system later on that people could almost cling on to, perhaps, or almost like a life raft. But in Libanon and Psychonaut, he has this to say about the current times that we are living in. And again, it is one of collapse and decline. He says, quote, "Fixed ideas about the essential spirit or nature of man will be completely abandoned. Drugs, obscure sexualities, faddism, strange entertainments, and material sensationalism are a preliminary groping towards this end."
All right, so he says those things, what he just mentioned, are a preliminary groping towards this end. I would say that, yeah, to some extent, right? Like the Frankism mindset of tearing everything down, and the more evil you do, the closer you'll get to God, right? But I think that era is over too. I think we're past that. I think we're returning to the idea of self-discipline and spiritual cultivation over a long time, and the invocation of these powers and a reunion with them as the way towards breaking free of trance, right? I think that those things which he just mentioned, that type of degeneracy and decadent behavior, only leads to dissolution and disintegration of the soul. And the opposite needs to be true, that you need genuine spiritual cultivation to arrive at a sustainable level of enlightenment.
The end being the abandonment of fixed ideas about the essential human nature. And he says also,
but the abandoning to an extent of those fixed ideas, like he said, I think that's a good thing too. I think Prometheus Rising, with Robert Anton Wilson, he was right in that group of guys that had done all of that stage for us. And I don't think we need to go down that path again. We can rise above and beyond it.
Well, what is our response to this? In essence, the chaos magic is a response to this. But he says again, quote, "The magical life demands the abandonment of comfort, conventionality, security, and safety. For competition, combat, extremes, and adversity are needed to produce higher resolutions and personal evolution."
To an extent, but what you need to realize is that self-discipline is that battle, right? You're not conquering someone outside of yourself. You're conquering the internal kingdom, and as a result, the external kingdom will reflect that. So you need to conquer those things in your immediate area of direct control too, so that the medium between direct control and no control, the area of influence, so that it aligns according to your magical principles and not the other way around. Not that just the feedback loop is the only thing that's creating your path through life. You need that internal moral compass, as they call it, right? But it's not that. Whenever you call it something, then it's not exactly that, but it can be likened to it.
Unquote. So we must face this time of lack of belief or disbelief, or in which the fixed nature of man is being eroded and dissolved, and all these strange subcultural manifestations are appearing and taking over what once was. And we must face it not through comfort, not even through doing sigil magic in our apartment or whatever it may be. These are almost incidental. I think the magic is almost incidental to the philosophy of the book. But instead, we must face it through abandoning comfort and having the bravery or the courage to go out into the world and face this sort of nihilistic situation that we are in, and to put ourselves into situations where we ourselves will be tested and can push ourselves to the limits and beyond the limits of ourselves.
Well, he's right in that, that the wizard, the magician, must live amongst the world in the red dust, as it were, the colored dust, and do battle, spiritual battle daily. But mostly this battle is done internally, right? Like, you don't necessarily need to be engaged in the physical battle of the prime material plane, because then you would only be sacrificing your life. Rather, do the opposite, do the inward battle, and do the battle of self-discipline and spiritual cultivation through all forms of hardship.
To discover, in fact, who we are or can be. Now, this is a very different view of chaos magic, of course, and I've just been looking back after many years of not reading Liber and Psychonaut, and find this sort of essential aspect, this philosophy behind it, to be maybe more interesting, and certainly more interesting than what we see on the net today, represented as chaos magic. And I think that is worth considering. But again, I'll be making more videos on spirituality, mysticism, and perhaps all kinds of magical and esoteric traditions as I go forward. So check back. Also, you can check out my website.
All right, very good. So we'll have a little cursory glance at Initiations to Hermetics, a course of instruction in magic theory and practice. First up, we've got these various forms of training, right? We've got mental, psychic, and physical training, as well as mental magic training. And then it goes into the various aspects of these as via steps, step 1, 2, 3, etc. So it's a very easy to follow course book. And we'll go a little more forward here into the definition of a magician so that we can see the template, as it were, the archetype that we're striving for. All right. The foreword gives us no doubt that everyone who has been searching for true and authentic cognition in vain looked for years, if not even for a lifetime, to find reliable methods. And so just as the divine providence decided to help all those seekers who have been searching with tough endurance to find means and ways for their spiritual cultivation through this workbook, universal methods are given into the hands of mankind by the highest initiate who was chosen by divine providence for this special task. Let's look directly at what a magician is, according to this coursework here. Theory and practice. Let's see here. We'll look at the introduction. Numerous sects and religions do not understand the expression of magic. Other than the black arts, witchcraft, or conspiracy with evil powers. Damn it. Give me a second, guys. It is therefore not astonishing that many people are frightened by a certain horror whenever the word magic is pronounced. Harry Potter. Charlatans have discredited this term, and considering this circumstance, there is no surprise that magical knowledge has always been looked upon with a slight disregard. Even the remotest times, the magus has been regarded as one of the highest adepts. And it might be of interest to learn that, as a matter of fact, the word magic is derived from this word, the magi, the magus. The so-called sorcerers are by no means initiates, but only imitators to the mysteries, who count partly on the ignorance and partly on the credulity of the individuality or a whole nation in order to reach their selfish aims by lies and fraud. The true magician was always despised. The true magician will always despise such practices. In reality, magic is a sacred science. It is, in the very true sense, the sum of all knowledge, because it teaches how to know and utilize the sovereign rules. And what are those rules and how do we know? So we know through memory and reviewing of memory and then analyzing and then creating, right? Achieving that highest level, that state of mastery of the knowledge, so that it is transformed through the magical process from knowledge and understanding into perfected wisdom. There, and the sovereign rules, what are those? Those are universal concourses, right? They're easy to see. They're like the sun and the moon. They do not admit even the slightest deviation in their seasonal course. And all we need to do is follow that, and we'll be doing good magic. But people love devious byways. They love to follow anything other than that. There is no difference between magic and mystic or any other conception of the name. Wherever authentic initiation is at stake, one has to proceed on the same basis according to the same rules, irrespective of the name given by this or that creed, right? So that last video we watched, it was all about establishing the creed of chaos magic. But we need to abandon that too, right? Because considering the universal polarity rules of good and evil, active and passive, light and shadow, each science can serve good as well as bad purposes. Let us take the example of a knife, an object that virtually ought to be used for cutting bread only. Yeah, right. Which, however, can become a dangerous weapon in the hands of a murderer. All depends on the character of the individual. This principle goes just as well for all spheres of the occult sciences. In his book, the term magician for all disciples is a symbol of the deepest initiation and highest perfected wisdom, right? So never forget, O neophyte, that the great work is before all things perfection. My bad. Sorry, guys. Creation of man by himself, right? Perfect mastery of his faculties and his future, and the emancipation of his will. That is the magic we're looking for. See if I can change this setup a little bit. Here we go. Okay, so he goes on to talk about the tarot. Very good. Many of the readers will know, of course, that the word tarot does not mean a game of cards serving magical purposes, but a symbolic book of initiation which contains the greatest secrets in a symbolic form. Right, so let's think about that process first. The first tablet of this book introduces the magician, representing him as master of the elements. So, yeah, because the Fool card is 0, right? The major arcana begins with 1, and the 0 just occupies all states in the empty space. So 0 comes before 1, it's after 1, it's between 1 and 2, it's between 2 and 3, it's 1 plus 0 is 10, the completed form, right? And return to the 1 again. So a symbolic book of initiation. So where do you begin? You begin the Fool's journey at the place of 0, right? The unbirthed spirit. And then you have to work up the middle pillar on the path of the magician for men and women alike. But, you know, the women are represented by the high priestess and the empress. Men are represented by the magician and the emperor, right? So we have these various aspects. The archetypes that we look forward to. So again, I was saying that what is he defining as the magician, or what can we use as our archetype, the epitome of this energy? For the men, they can choose the magician, and women can choose the magician too, because they also need a masculine aspect. And the men can also reflect on the high priestess, right? You should also cultivate the Shekinah, the beauty of God, the spirit, the Holy Spirit, the feminine principle. Most definitely. In fact, Lao Tzu said you should maintain the feminine principle in all things, right? Gentleness and receptivity. The first tablet of this book is the magician, representing him as the master of the 4 elements, right? So the 4 states of things as they appear, right? The division of the oneness, the matter, the gas, the liquid, the plasma, and the aether. offering the key to the first arcanum, the secret of the ineffable name of the Tetragrammaton, the Kabbalistic Yod-He-Vah-He, or Aniyahava, right? I am Yod-He-Vah-He. Here we will therefore find the gate to the magician's initiation. The reader, and again, you should move from earth to air. So you study the first four elements in reverse order: earth, air, water, and then fire. Because you deal with that which is most tangible first, and then move to that which is most ephemeral and most dynamic, right? From the fixed to the dynamic. Out of darkness to the light. Here we will therefore find the gate of the magician. The reader will easily realize how significant and how manifold the application of that tablet is. Not one of the books published up to date does describe the true sense of the first card so distinctly as I have done in my book. It is, let it be noted, born from the own practice and destined for the practical use of a lot of other people. And all disciples have found it to be the best and most serviceable system. So we already have this right here. The best and most serviceable system of study and application of, or the method itself, right? And what is that method? It's that very simple process, right? You call upon and infuse yourself with the cosmic particle. It descends down and manifests into the prime material plane, and then you go right back up. You take all of that prime matter, put it into a gaseous state, let it liquefy. That's the distillation process. And after liquefaction comes coagulation, and then tincture and the plasma. The plasma arises from that. You can create the plasma through this process. And the plasma is the divine spark, which is used in the cauldron to create quintessence, the philosopher's stone. Tetragrammaton literally means the four-letter word. It was a subterfuge to avoid the sin of uttering the sacred name, Yahweh, or Jehovah, as it later became when the vowels of another word were combined with the consonants. But I would never dare to say that this book describes or deals with all magic or mystic problems. If anyone should like to write all about this sublime wisdom, he's ought to fill volumes. Voluminous pages upon pages, right? That's why the Akashic Records is there. That way you can get it nose te ipsum, right? You can get it from gnosis. It can, however, be affirmed positively that this work is indeed the gate to true initiation. The first key to using the universal rules. I am not going to deny the fact of fragments being able to be found in many an author's publications, but no single book will the reader find so exact a description of the first tarot card. He said that he took pains to be as plain as possible in the course of the lectures to make the sublime truth accessible to everyone. Although it has been a hard task to find such simple words as are necessary for the understanding of a broad audience, I must leave it to the judgment of all of you whether or not my efforts have been successful. At certain points, he's been forced to repeat himself deliberately to emphasize some important sentence to spare the reader any going back to the particular page. There have been complaints of people interested in occult sciences that they never got the chance to be initiated by a personal master. Yeah, you should seek out that opportunity if you can, because it's really valuable. It's really worthwhile. Only people endowed with exceptional facilities, a poor preferred minority, seem to be able to gain the sublime knowledge. Thus, a great many of serious seekers of the truth had to go through piles of books just to catch one pearl in it now and again. The one, however, who is earnestly interested in his progress does not pursue this sacred wisdom from sheer curiosity, or else his yearning to satisfy his own lust will find the right leader to initiate him into this book. No incarnate adept, however high rank he may be, can give the disciple more for his start than the present book does. If both the honest trainee and attentive reader will find in this book all they have been searching for in vain all the years, the book has fulfilled its purpose. Picture of the magician. We're going to go through that picture together, you and me, dear reader, dear listener, dear initiate. All right. Let's get into it a little bit. All right. So now we're looking at the picture of the magician, the first tarot card. As above, so below you will find the mineral, vegetable, and animal kingdoms expressed in a symbolic manner. On the left side and on the female on the left side and the male on the right side are the plus and minus in every human being. And they are ultimately, we know at this level of study, that the plus and minus are the yin-yang symbol, the polarity, the principle of polarity in the 7 Hermetic principles, right? In Chinese, I always have trouble referring to it when I'm speaking English because it's actually called a Taiji Tu. And the more people knew that this is actually the Taiji or Taiji Tu, then you can more easily understand the Wuji principle or non-polarized energy. But the limitations of the English language prevent us from expressing that directly as easily as we can in Chinese. All right. Welcome back, Wayfarer. Hope you're doing well once again on this wild journey into the abodes of the night with your friend and well-wisher, Frank Monday, broadcasting to you from the central kingdom of the celestial dragon in Twilight Zone Old Peking, far behind the bamboo firewall. Absolutely hit the like button, guys. Leave a comment on the video, share it out to a friend, and visit me at buymeacoffee.com/Frank Monday. Help me reach 1,000 subs, dear friend, because in the future we can do even greater things together. Alone we can't do much, man. We need the help and support of our brothers and sisters on the way that walk the journey with us. Let's continue. The Magician card, we are studying the electrical and magnetical fluids as shown in red and blue colors. Electrical fluid being red, magnetical fluid being blue. We also know these are the opposite ends of the visible spectrum, right? The electric expansive and the magnetic negative contractive being two sides of the same coin. And that's the method right there, is the correct oscillation up the central pillar, right? Red and blue make green, or red, blue and yellow make green, don't they? Which two colors make green? It's a damn good question. But the spectrum dead center is the green spectrum on the equation. That's why they give it the G. In the middle is seen a hermaphrodite, a creature personifying male and female combined in one as the sign of consanity. It's an interesting word. Consanity between the male and female principle. The head of the female is electric and therefore red. The region of the genitalia is magnetical, consequently blue. As for the male, it is inverted. The head of the male is magnetic and blue, and his genitalia are red, engorged with blood and semen. Above the Adonis, there is a global sign of the earth plane, which the magician is illustrated with the 4 elements. Above the male, there are active elements, that of the fire in red and the air element in blue color. Above the female, there are the passive elements, the water element in green, and the element of earth in yellow and green. That's what we seek out, dear magician. The feminine counterpart to our masculine energy. Try to drop that. Yeah, good magic. And if you are out there in Happy Land tonight, tuning in, I welcome you, one and all, Wayfarer, Wildcat, Wanderer alike, whoever you are, wherever you are. Feel free to call in. This is the bottom of the first hour, top of the second hour. So we'll do the updates here a little bit. Update the channel. Grand Wizard of the Esoteric Order of Dagon. All hail the Father Dagon. All hail the Mother Hydra. Cthulhu has risen. Your friend and well-wisher, Frater Francis Lunas Aristeas of the OTA. Tuning in once again on the 100-day challenge Pathways of Magic with a live jive archive. We're looking at Franz Barton's initiation to Hermetics, and we're learning the supreme method by analysis of the tarot card, the Magician. Let's get into it. The middle pillar, up to the globe in dark purple, representing the sign of the Akashic Principle. What is that, dear magician? What is the sphere of dark purple energy, and what is its flashing color? What is it illuminated with? Do you know, aspirant? If you don't know, should you go forward? Right? Do you know this basic magical principle? Wayfarer? Wildcat alike? I am in the abodes of the Aether at the present. Okay, interesting. Good to see. Good to hear. If you are out in Happy Land and you would like to have a behind-the-scenes conversation, as it were, we can always pause this live transmission and speak incognito, in privy. Above the magician's head, with an invisible ribbon for a crown, there is a golden-edged, silvery white lotus flower as the sign of the divinity. In the inside, there is a ruby red philosopher's stone symbolizing the quintessence of the whole hermetic. Right there, man. Just stay right there for a little while and go from the elemental stage, right, to that dark purple globe of energy. What do you think of that? With the invisible ribbon, gold-edged, silvery white lotus. Gold-edged, silvery white lotus. And deep, dark, divine purple. Yeah? Do you know what that sphere is? In the inside, there is a ruby red philosopher's stone, symbolizing the quintessence. What is that red philosopher's stone? What's going on with that bad boy? All right. Do you know what that is? We just mentioned it a moment ago, but now you're dealing with the elements and spiritual elements, these super sensual elements. Those elements which are on the plane of Aether. On the right side, on the right side in the background, there is the sun, yellow like gold, red gold, scintillating, bright, vibrating at a high frequency. On the left side, we see the moon, silvery white and blue, fading to a Stygian dark gray and purple, expressing plus and minus in the macro-microcosm. The electrical and magnetical fluids. Above the lotus flower, do you guys know this lotus flower? Have you ever seen this lotus flower in meditation or deep contemplation? Creation has been symbolized by a ball, in the interior of which are represented the procreative positive and the negative forces which stand for the creating act of the universe. Even the universal creative principle it can be understood at the microcosmic level, at the level of man, because you understand the dynamic interaction of yin and yang in the prime material plane, right? How do we create further life? By creating through the interaction of these two energies. And we will take a brief break from the transmission, guys, and we'll come back in a little while. Until then, ad astra per aspera, into the abodes of the Aether, and I'll see you soon.